Welcome back to Meridian News Now Special Report. I'm Morgan Durden. One of Meridian Township's 2019 goals is to explore alternatives and options to encourage diverse populations and target groups to live in the township. Joining me to talk about that is Trustee Patricia Jackson. Thanks for joining us, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you.
So at the township meetings, you've been pretty vocal about wanting to explore alternative options for all age groups and diverse populations. Tell me a little bit about why that's important.
It's important partly because all kinds of people live in the area, in the region, and Meridian Township has very explicitly noted that it wants to be a welcoming community to all of the residents in Michigan and in this area.
So for these rezonings and housing developments, are you thinking about other people coming to the community? Are you thinking about transitioning from the current residents to different kinds of housing? Or what factors do you look at when choosing these options for the housing?
In general, just providing as many options as possible for different people to make choices that, to have an opportunity to live the way they want to live. And so we hope for the kind of diversity that people can continue to live in the township, age in place, grow up and have the greatest quality of life that we can offer here in Meridian Township.
So just catering to all the different age groups and having different needs for them?
Sure, certainly as providing as many options as possible.
That's awesome. So are there certain trends that the township has been seeing over the years for housing options, or what people are looking for?
Well, the kinds of trends that you see in all of society. There are younger people moving more often for changing jobs more often, as a matter of fact, and then needing places to live that meet their needs for comfort and entertainment and enrichment. And then you have options of particularly issues particularly in Meridian Township, where you have a slightly larger senior population than you find in the nation in general, and apparently some of those people are choosing to age in place, but they don't necessarily want to age in the same house, the same living conditions in which they raised two to 5 children, nor do they want to continue to do what has to be done to maintain those places and to those kinds of houses, those typical single family owner-occupied homes in Meridian Township don't meet their needs and don't satisfy their requirements any longer. And so there are people who are here who want to stay here, but don't want to be living with the same lifestyle that they've had before. And so certainly we're looking to provide more options for them. There are new people who want to work in the area, in the region, in the township, and they're looking for great housing and in a great community. And we also want to provide as many options for them to choose from as well.
So we were talking earlier about mixing those age groups and the diversity.
Oh, yes.
So how do you think are you encouraging that, and do you think that would be a great idea?
I think it's a fabulous idea. Intergenerational particularly. I like the idea of seniors living among younger people, and so the concept plan that came before us in December, where a developer wanted to provide a senior living situation which he called continuing care. And so this particular project had elements of independent living for seniors, assisted living for seniors, and I think more intensely care driven or described living, and he wanted to put it in one development, one community, and he wants to put it in a community near the university where we have a very student intense community, and I think that's a fabulous idea. This is in an area which also has single family homes with in different developments around it, and so this mixing of generations and types and different needs in a contiguous area is appealing to me.
I think that would be a good idea, just to mix the student housing, and the university is so close to the township.
Right.
I think it'd be interesting to see that those two, especially those two pretty much age groups living together. But
and then when we are trying to provide as many opportunities as possible to have walkable communities where people can meet their immediate needs within a walking distance, trying to cut down on some of that infamous traffic in Meridian Township. Right, and so the given opportunities to do that, we like to encourage it.
so when you're deciding on these rezonings and the developments, what factors does a board consider when they're like, these are in front of them?
We consider things like the needs and desires of the people who are already in that area. We consider how the mobility of those people, how they move and to where they need to go, together. We consider certainly the zoning districts, and we try to set them up so that uses are compatible from one to the next. And so, what other kinds of things? We certainly have to consider things like the soil and the
Wetlands is a big talk.
Wetlands and the capacity of the soil to handle, the type of development that we're looking at. There are lots of things to consider, yes.
So there's a lot been rezoning been brought to the board, and what has been done so far to explore the alternative housing for the community?
Well, so much of the rezoning that we've been getting lately involves increasing the density of some of our neighborhoods so that more people live on smaller lots in a development, for example. And even, for example, in the downtown Ockham development, we're talking about, we have developed a plan to increase the density considerably on a fairly small, in a very small area, partly by elevating the height or changing our height restrictions. We actually had very stringent height restrictions that we adhered to for considerable length of time. But in this kind of development where we're looking for a village, you might say an old-fashioned village type of community, we're allowing now 3 to 4 to 5 even floors with certain conditions that first increases the density on the land, but secondly make that a more comfortable situation for the people who are already there and the people who will be living in those mixed-use units.
So the Ockham plan, could that be a place for diverse population and age groups, do you think?
Oh, certainly, because we're talking in this case in the downtown Ockham's development about, I believe, mostly some long-term ownership and occupation and some short-term. And so you know, there are all kinds of possibilities there, and the developer seems to be listening to our desire for a more walkable, interactive, connected community, and hopefully he can give us that when he finishes.
Yeah, I'm sure that can meet the needs of seniors who like the walkability with all the amenities close together, and also young people who maybe don't want to drive all around and are kind of like compact to where they are in an apartment or something, don't have roommates. I can see that really accommodating everyone.
The other thing is that these units, the other trend that you'll find in these kinds of units too, is they'll be smaller than the large houses many of us live in, and the types of housing that we've raised our children in, and we're now in a different stage where we need less space, and more people are finding less space to live in more attractive.
Yeah, so personally as a resident, what kind of housing options and alternatives would you like to see be encouraged?
Well,
like multi-unit where compactability like we were talking about, or like
in certain places. I'm not a big fan of the tiny house as an addendum to an addition to single family, but then there are instances, the situations where it makes perfect sense to do that because the house is on such a big piece of property. More people could be accommodated with using that tiny house quote kind of concept. And so they could be, they call them something else. It could be smaller housing units, temporary housing, mother-in-law apartments, those kinds of things, added to homes in our single-family communities. So there are lots of options. There are some other options out there.
That's great. Thanks. I think that's all the time we have for today. So thanks so much for joining us. It was a pleasure talking to you. And after the break, we take a look at why the cost of medications are rising. All this and more on Meridian News Now Special Report, your source for community news.